Hello, everybody, and welcome to Purves Versus. I am Eric Purves. This is the podcast for all massage, manual, and movement therapists. For those of you that don't know me, my objective is to educate, inspire, and advocate for the musculoskeletal professions, particularly the profession of massage therapy, so we can provide higher value, meaningful care to the public through evidence-based principles informed by best practices. Now, why am I doing another podcast, and what is this one about that's going to make it different from others? Well, what I want to do is in each episode, I want to discuss specific topics that are important to our industry while also exploring current trends and evidence-based content. I'm going to be doing this through a series of solo episodes, but also I will be interviewing therapists from across the world. Now, some of the topics which you will hear on this podcast are going to include the value of myth busting. I have some interviews with those who use social media and other platforms to bust those myths. We're going to explore the new RMT experience and how did this prepare them for the real world of clinical practice. I got a bunch of interviews with some CEC providers to uncover why they do what they do and what they have to offer, and why the continuing education industry is the current best way to stay up to date with developments in the science and best practices of massage and manual therapy. I'm going to also do an interview with somebody who went to school in an unregulated province and explore what their educational experience was like for them. And we'll also have some discussions and some interviews with people on modality empires and also the role of professional associations and how these influence the profession and its various stakeholders. In this first episode, this is going to be mostly an about me episode, just to give you guys that may not be familiar with me a little bit more about who I am and what I'm all about and why am I doing my own podcast. Some of you might be familiar with me from my previous podcast, the Massage Therapist Development Initiative, which I did with my long time friend, Jamie Johnson. And we decided to retire that one this year after 29 episodes. We started it, I believe, during the COVID lockdown as something to keep us busy and keep us entertained, I guess, really, while we were, shut up in our houses. And we just found it more difficult as time went on to keep to get together to record episodes and to come up with content. Just as our lives got busy and our schedules got more difficult, it just made sense just to retire it. And we had a great time doing that. Like I said, we had 29 episodes, and it was a lot of fun. This one, though, this podcast, Purves Versus, was something I actually came up with around the time of the COVID lockdown. It seemed then I was listening to a lot of podcasts, and I thought to myself, you know what? I would like to have my own podcast out there. And I thought this title was interesting because I didn't want it to be Purves Versus as a way of like me challenging or fighting against things, but I wanted it to be a platform for me to share my thoughts, my ideas, my feelings on a variety of different topics. I know there's a podcast out there called Science Versus. This name wasn't stolen from that. I actually didn't know that one existed until I brought up the idea for this one, and someone said, "Oh, your podcast is going to be like Science Versus." And I thought, "Oh, crap." No, but there is a similarity in the title. Also, too, what's nice with this title is people can actually hear how to pronounce my last name. I have been called everything you can imagine with my last name, but the way it is actually pronounced is Purves. I have responded to Purves and Purves and Purves and Purves of all kinds of different ways of saying it, but Purves is how my last name is pronounced. This is the question I get asked every single time from everybody. How do you pronounce your last name? So anyway, people can listen to this podcast and hopefully they can hear how to say my name. Now, what am I about and why do I do what I do? Well, it's a long story, but I'll try and make it quick. I first started advocating and teaching, and maybe a little bit of complaining at first about the state of the massage therapy profession probably close to 10 years ago, because what was happening was I was finding information out there that was readily available if you just knew where to look, that really challenged every single thing that we are taught in our profession, and every single thing that is advocated for by our stakeholders and by our professional associations and by our schools was actually in some cases completely incorrect, in some places just misinformed. But I was finding that our profession had created this entire culture of beliefs and ideas and ways of viewing the human body and ways of treating people that was actually quite inconsistent with basically all the literature that was out there on pain and manual therapy and movement and exercise. And what I had learned in school and in my previous courses, like continuing education courses, was this very pathoanatomical, very structural approach to care. And when I took this knowledge and these principles into my clinical practice, I found that they didn't really work very well and they didn't make any sense, because what I was seeing in clinical practice was not represented by what had learned or what I was learning. And I initially thought, well, I just must be an idiot. I might not have any idea what I'm talking about. Maybe I just need to take more courses. So I kept chasing, going in circles, taking more courses, trying to learn more things. And things still didn't make sense with what I was seeing in the clinic. And then when you start to go online and does things like Facebook started to, and Twitter and these other platforms started to explode, I found that my knowledge base wasn't there. I didn't know what I needed to know. And it was from taking a deep dive into the pain science literature that it really started to make sense to me that, pain is more than just the state of a tissue. What we do with our hands as massage and manual therapists is a piece of the puzzle of clinical practice, but it wasn't the be all and end all. And I can't fix people with my hands regardless of how magical I wanted them to be. Now, this was a hard lesson to learn, and it was very difficult to accept that the way I've been practicing or the things I had thought was not represented by what the literature was telling me. But with somebody with a science background, I had to decide that I could no longer just practice based on my beliefs, and I had to practice based on what the research was telling me. And so this led me to pursuing graduate studies, led me to getting my first teaching job with on the education faculty with Pain BC, and then led me to creating my own educational business of teaching Con Ed. And this was kind of what led me to where I am today, where I've been fortunate enough to be able to research and to teach and to advocate for the profession of massage therapy primarily, but all musculoskeletal professions, because the way things currently are in the profession we're behind, and we aren't where we need to be. And podcasts and continuing education courses and blogs and social media engagement are my way of bringing information out to the public, because what I learned early on was trying to change the stakeholders, trying to influence the colleges or the professional associations or all the schools was kind of an exercise in futility, where it didn't seem to matter what I was doing. People weren't listening, or people didn't want to change, and they all stood around and pointed their fingers at each other and blamed each other for why things didn't change. And in my experience, what I've learned is that people do want to change. People do want to, advocate for best practices. They do want to update their curriculum. They do want to update, how things are done in the profession. But it's a matter of will. And so what I've decided to do many years ago was, by being an advocate and an educator, to build a kind of a groundswell of people that are knowledgeable and passionate and or will advocate for change, because it's through this collective group of hundreds or thousands of massage therapists that say, hey, you know what, we want more, we want better. We're no longer going to accept that, we're going to pay $40,000 to go to school and learn content that is 30, 40 years old. We are no longer going to accept taking courses that are based on beliefs and pseudoscience. We're going to now start taking courses that are based on the best available science. And it's not a matter of opinion, it's a matter of what I always like to say is less wrong information. So that's what I want to give to you guys with this podcast is a variety of voices and a variety of information and stories that we can explore with various people, with the focus always being on how can we make this profession better? What is it we can do to amongst ourselves in our communities and within our local clinics to be better and to really give the public what they deserve, which is higher quality care. Now, for me, I enjoy challenging the status quo. It can be scary sometimes when you're going against industry norms, but this is what we need to do so the profession can move forward with science and provide better care. And this is because this is what the public needs, and this is what the profession needs. The public deserves to go to see us and to get evidence-based care, evidence-based advice, communication that is supported, treatments that are supported. And maybe your treatment as a massage therapist, maybe at its least, it's just an analgesic. It maybe just makes people feel better. That's okay. You guys will probably hear me use the term touch people nicely as a way to say, hey, find a touch that feels good. Maybe that's all we're doing in that day, but that's still valuable. Practicing in outdated and unproven frameworks from 30 to 40 years ago, this is not acceptable. I could go on and on about these things forever, but that's what the rest of these podcast episodes are for. I'm going to do my best to get new episodes out every 2 weeks. I will try my best. I can't guarantee it, but, life happens. But please, if you want to subscribe, please check out in the show notes below. There's a link there where you can subscribe to new podcasts. Otherwise, you can just go to Buzzsprout and you can go to search Purves Versus there. Or please visit me on my website, which is ericpurves.com. That's ERICPURVES. Or connect with me on social media. Facebook and Instagram are the ones I'm at the most. So Eric Purves RMT is my Facebook name, or Eric_Purves_RMT on Instagram. Please connect with me there. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything you'd like me to cover in future episodes, or if you just have questions about anything in general related to the profession of massage therapy, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can connect me on my website, which is, once again, www.ericpurves.com. Thank you for listening.